Welcome to Choosing Love. I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Jackie. We are sharing soulful conversations about integrating spirituality in your everyday life.
And today we're talking about those feelings that come in sometimes, like more negative, judgmental, comparing feelings. And how do we open the way to feel more love, to bring awareness to those feelings and the way in which it kind of closes us and begin to open. I love a quote that I wanted to share. It's by Esther Hicks and Abraham, and it says, there is only one stream of well-being. There's only one stream of well-being that flows. You can allow it or resist it, but it flows just the same. I just love that because, whether we are opening or closing is kind of like our choice. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And yeah, we invite everyone to join in. And if you have a question or a comment, we'd love to hear from you. We want to make this nice and interactive and whatever you're feeling in regards to this, because it's a big, topic. What do you have about that, Jackie? Anything you want to share? What comes up right away?
Yeah, to me, sometimes I think when we judge other people, I think we're really judging ourselves a lot of the time. Like we're trying to find our lens in this world about what we're feeling that is going inside of ourselves, or we're seeing something in front of us that we're not liking, but it's touching something inside of us, or or hitting on our fears or whatnot. So I think there's so many different areas we can go with judgments and thinking, and it can be obsessive. So the question is why are we having these thoughts? And for me, and for the work that I do, it's always about how we feel about in ourselves. If we're perceiving the world out there as bad or unsafe or wrong or whatnot, there's something that's actually that's happened inside of us that we want to clear. And some of it, I think, is due to the way we are taught to perceive the world and how we're supposed to judge. And I think as a society and as a culture, I think we're trying to come out of it. And sometimes we get blocked by that. And all of a sudden, the loop just keeps happening in the mind. So that's kind of my thought with judgments. So
yeah, I had been reading the book Judgment Detox by Gabrielle Bernstein. I'm not sure if you catch that, but she talks about how the reason that we judge is because sometime kind of we're all born, as love, compassion, connection. That's kind of innate. That's our essence. Yet at some point early on, likely like when we were very young, we experienced something that is some separation from that love, some kind of separation. So it could be, any kind of an experience that we had, and at that time there's a close that happens, and so that separation is what keeps happening, and it's like our projection. So let's say we're just to give an example. So I think I love what you said about how it's kind of like judging ourselves versus judging others. And sometimes you're what you're seeing is a mirror of what's going on inside of you, right? Like that's a key part of it. But so to get back, and it kind of even comes back a little bit to what we talked about last week, where we talked to Scott, who was he was recovering from addiction, and it took him having to kind of go back to that early kind of that hurt that happened, and I think that the same, we project in different ways. So maybe for some person, they find themselves there's a voice in their head that's, judging them, saying inside, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I can't match up to someone else. You're kind of comparing yourself. But it could be something different for someone else. Someone else may, maybe more angry, or, you may physically respond when you have those feelings come up. So yeah, I feel like there's different, and we'll talk through it today, but there's some steps that kind of go through to help you, like some tools when those the kind of things are happening when you're feeling closed, so that you can open back up and return to that love that's inside. But we can be close to it sometimes when those feelings are stuck in our head.
Yeah, so that's as you're talking, the word disconnection from ourself is what happens when we're engaging, like when we're engaging in that judgment state. But I don't know if I'm not trying to encourage judgments at all. But what was coming up too is like sometimes, not that I judge, I get more curious about things outside of me where I have an opinion of. So, because I'm intuitive, so I read people's energy, and sometimes I think I've been a lot better that I don't just go around reading anybody's energy. But sometimes when I see something and it looks out of, I won't say the norm, but out of alignment for someone,
Mhm.
I get more curious about what is that person's story, to have compassion for them or whatnot, to be where they're at. So that's kind of something that I do. I don't go to this place of like, where it'll result in like hurt or like engaging in gossip. Like it'll never go to that extent. It's just the more of like getting curious about the person. I mean, granted, it could create stories, I guess you could call it. But with me, with my intuition is that I get curious. I get really curious about who that person is. And that's more about me. Like when it comes to that stuff, that I just really am more curious. But then I will be honest with you. I mean, like we grew up in the age of magazines where, I do find myself comparing my like body image to other women. And I do find myself heavily judging myself more than I would judge, like you. Or I'm always very outwardly like, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful. And I forget to turn to myself and say, you are so beautiful. You are so
Mhm.
beautiful. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, as far as like, I think that is one really great tool to look at it, is to like get curious about it. And even like, whenever feelings are coming up that are making you uncomfortable, like you said, if you can just like get curious about it and just be like, wow, that's an interesting, thought that come up. I wonder where that's coming from. And because it's like that, even that like sheer like awareness of it and like curious about it helps you kind of move through it. And that's like can be
wouldn't
really helpful.
wouldn't it be great? Like all those thoughts that ruminate in your head, if you were constantly in like a peaceful meditative state where it wasn't there, can you imagine how much stuff you really would get done in a day? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like how much space would be available to us. And, they talk about, our brain is only like, I don't even know what the percentage of capacity that we use of it. Can you imagine if we could just let that go, that those pieces go, the programming, the judgments, whatever comes up,
Hmm.
what would we do with the power of all that space? And
Yeah.
fill it up with stuff, you know?
Yeah, I think it's like less than 10%, are of like what we're using, like our new thoughts or something, because a lot of it is just like, recycled programming.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's huge. Yeah, I know. I think that's kind of like that's the work, right? That's like what we talk about, just like how do we do that? How do we like I think I became aware of it like so for so long I think I just kind of, not like wasn't even conscious of that voice inside me that was like, because I think what's interesting too is you may find yourself like so like you hear kind of like you hear maybe when like you can be against yourself, right? So like treating yourself like you would a friend, but let's say the voice inside of you is against you, like it's saying, wow, you can, right before you're about to give a presentation, say like, oh my gosh, there's so many people, are you prepared enough, like those words, like I don't know if you can do this, when stuff like that comes up, there's different ways, like, but there's different ways to think about it. Like one is like thinking that you're better than everyone, right? Like, so there's two ways that tricky voice comes in. Like,
Mhm.
one is thinking you're better than everyone, and that's kind of more ego thinking, right? Then the other, still ego, is like you're not as good as everyone, and then but like to get awareness of it, that's the first step, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things, like once you get that awareness, then you can choose, compassion, or self-compassion is one of the best ones, because it's a natural, it's a twinge of heart of, looking at yourself with kindness, being aware first of what you're thinking, and then choosing a more loving response. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's to think about, not being like not hearing that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who don't have that struggle. Maybe there is a little bit more, they have more clarity, and they're not kind of feeling that
Oh, I have to tell
that
you,
conditioning.
Lindsay, I gotta tell you, my husband does not have it. Like,
Mhm.
he doesn't judge, and it I mean, he may have some thoughts in his head, but he really, like, has, like, this button inside of his system that if something pops up, he's just so aware that he's
Mhm.
able to look at everything really in a beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, I've learned so much from him. The one thing I
Mhm.
wanted to add to what you said, Lindsay, is yes, it is awareness. It's when it becomes in your awareness, when you recognize that it's showing up for you like it did, that means it's ready to go. It's ready to be
Mhm.
healed. It's ready to move out of its way. And it's just not like it doesn't have to be judgment in its looping, but it could be these each and individual parts that want to be healed. So for me, the best way to do that is to, when it comes through, I say, I'm aware of that thought, and all of a sudden I say, in the moment, I may feel something, but I know what I want. I want a different thinking because the other way didn't work for so long. So I turn my attention to where I want to go, and then I say, no, thank you. This isn't working for me, but thank you very
Mhm.
much. I'm going to say this. And I go ahead and say, I am beautiful. I am smart. I am strong. I just use those terms. And even now, as my child is my 3-year-old now is growing up, when he gets scared, I hold him and I say, I am brave. I am safe. I have him repeat these affirmations every night so he can feel confident in everything that he does. And it is really cool to see, like, how he
Mhm.
treats other people and whatnot. I don't know if I just totally went off, but I just wanted to show you when something arises, how we can retrain our minds to do something else. We have the power, and just keep on thinking about what would we do with that extra space. Once
Mhm.
once we become automatic, because judgments become so automatic, we can change the automatic
Mhm.
process, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really great that, we can train our brains, and there's no, and especially, like, what is judgment? It's anything that you're feeling that doesn't feel good, right? Like, if there's thoughts that are coming through that, that, and I think the tricky thing is also in kind of embracing it and knowing, like, it's like you can feel it, allow yourself to feel it, but not get completely entwined in it, and like let it take away from the conversations that you're having, the connections that, if it's coming through. But yeah, I think, that's the work, is to, be more aware of it. And I would say for a long time, I wasn't aware. Like, I kind of would go through and, like, continue to go into situations and feel like, like, be kind of in a cloud,
Mhm.
for a while. But now, yeah, having that awareness, and then you have that choice, right? That awareness is the first step. And then, but yeah, being able to create some space, it helps even in, yeah, like what's going on around you as a parent, being able to create some space between what's happening in front of you, and how you're choosing to respond. But yeah, I think, giving your son those affirmations right now, that's such a great,
Yeah.
great tool for him to have so that he can turn to that. I've been reading something else too, where about like kind of our brain, our mind is just patterned to keep us safe, right? To keep us alive, basically, like ancestral brain. And how do we, I guess one of the questions is, and it's like, it's going to do everything possible to just make happen whatever thought you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So that's what's there. So, but you have to kind of retrain it if it's not serving you.
Yeah. I mean, it probably, like what you're saying. And when you say that about ancestral brain, I also think in my world, I talk about family lineage. So what's brought into us? So it's the belief system. Like, what do we believe? Like, what are we believing in? And where do we adopt that from? When we know when it doesn't feel good in our system, it doesn't work for our society today. It just doesn't. Like, think about like, like slavery, like that's not even existing anymore. Like, get over it, move, like, let us move on from this. Like, everyone treat everyone well. No one owns anybody, like
Mm-hmm.
we all belong here. And the more that we keep feeding into those old ideas, we're never going to have growth. We're never going to have that full capacity of love that we can have in society. I want to go back to you, because I was listening, and I want to know, when you talk about your awareness, when was there like a pinnacle moment in your life where you realized, or what made you wake up from being aware of when you're judging? Was it some class you were taking? Was it meditation? Was it having children? Like, what?
I think it was, I think it was a compilation. I mean, I've always been one to like read, and, I've always been like interested. I think what was funny for me is like, on my own, I never really had those feelings. So like I was be tuned in and connected, but whenever I got into certain situations, like around people I wasn't comfortable with, or, in a different environment, a new, like a new job, a new social group, that's when I kind of like get into that different conditioning. And so I think I became more aware because I would notice how I didn't feel that way all the time. Like I only felt that way in certain situations. And so I'm like, why, I'm one person, I'm one essence. Why am I showing up differently? And I realized it was, that kind of ego thinking of like, and sometimes it would be for me, like, wow, I'm doing great, I'm feeling good. And I think it was even kind of that idea of like, what, like sometimes like your ego tells you you're like the best in a certain, like you're doing the best, you're doing great. And then other times it's like you're the worst. It's like those really strong polar opposites, as opposed to just, riding the waves and knowing like I'm no better or no worse than anyone else. Like we're all here, we're with our own gifts, our own passions. We're here like with our own unique, yet, I used to kind of have these feelings of like not being good enough or being good enough. And so, yeah, I think it's a gradual thing of bringing that awareness in. Definitely when I started to have, when I became a mom, things really opened up for me, because I think it was one of the first times when I felt so in flow. Like I just felt like it was like I was doing work that like, or not that it was work, but it was just like, it felt really close to me. I just think I grew so much and just kind of was awakened to, some of those, that story that wasn't just the practice of, starting meditation practice and, running, like doing these things that, where I could kind of listen to myself and tune in and recognize that was really me, that I'm kind of more that love, not that fearful thing.
I hear what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
I think I hear what you're saying. So you're coming into love, like you're coming into yourself. So you're coming into the loving being that you're meant to be. So I get that. And the other thing is like, I can relate with the being the mom thing, but mine's a little, I think mine might be a little bit different. And where, I was modeling it. Like, just like remember when Jen Kubilak was on this show with us, and she mentioned about modeling. And for me, I realized that whenever I say something, if that wasn't in the best statement for myself, I heard my child say it, and I realized, oh my God, I am not modeling what I want my child to be or what I want to be. So I learned that I had to first give myself a break, have compassion, recognize it, and also come back to it. So I really had to stand in my truth and stand in who I am. And it helped me to take a breath and realize, okay, I don't want my child, especially my older girl, to have these thoughts about herself. So we go back to that whole ancestral brain that Lindsay mentioned, and I believe, it's family line. So how can I clean that up? Because it was taught to me, and now I want to teach it. I want to teach a better way for my daughter, because the world is not accepting. Well, that's even judging too, right? So I want my girl to be powerful. I want my boy to be powerful. I want them to have this life full of freedom and love. And I want that same thing for everybody else around me as well. So, so being in judgment is it is the way that we learned. And now if we can teach the younger generation by just as the older generation, being, more maybe identifying individuals and really seeing people the way that their light wants to shine, and not finding all the things that are wrong with them. And even with our children, and I think it's really important to speak to them in terms of to find what's always right with them, and be excited and show them ways and give them choices. I think choices help with diffusing judgment as well. So the other things about judgment is I think also people do judgments because they're bored. Because there's probably silence. Like, let's think about, like, if you're in a car and you see someone down the street and you're like, something like that, somebody, something's going on with that person. And it's just because there's empty space. So we don't know what to do. So we don't know what to do with this energy inside our brains. And instead of putting it to good use, we put it to toxic thoughts, because that's where we want to go with it. And it's also probably because we have nervous energy, or the silence is awkward, or something else. But sometimes something gets thrown in front of us, and something gets triggered inside of us. So instead of looking outward, we can ask ourselves, like, what was touched inside of us? What was touched inside of, what was in touch inside of us? So So I guess, like Lindsay was saying, the first step is just to be curious about it. Why does this happen? Why do so many of us feel separated? Maybe even within our own self. So I do remember a story, actually, when I did have a pretty good awareness. It was actually happened in the bathroom, and I was just in the bathroom, and all of a sudden my mind started wandering to just a lot of, I have been so tired. I haven't been sleeping. And when you don't sleep, I got to tell you, the mind, the judgment comes. And I started, like, it was almost like I was telling myself, like, there's something wrong with you. Just thoughts of, like, I'm not good enough. I can't be seen. All this stuff kept coming in for me. And finally, like I said earlier, I just sat there and I put my hand up and I said, no, thank you. Like, no, I don't want these thoughts anymore. I want to think about myself like this. I think sometimes the process of letting go of that judgment person, it could be even an archetype if you're familiar with archetypes, but um, that you just say goodbye and I want to step into this new person, and it's okay because it's called evolving and growth. So, hi, Lindsay, welcome back. We're talking
Thank
about,
you.
yeah, I know that the internet can be tricky sometimes, but I was just talking about the first steps that we may be just curious about it. Why does this happen? And why do so many of us feel this separation? And I just told a little story about one of my awakenings where I was in a bathroom. So don't leave me alone here. I'm talking about me being in the bathroom. You're not allowed to leave me ever again. I'm just kidding. When you leave me alone, stories just come up. So I was just telling him a story about how I could hear that voice and that awareness and how it woke me up, and just the awakening of the awareness of it, and really wanting to really begin to start this new path of love, like choosing love from not just only for myself, but how I see other people. Because
Mm.
judgments are so tiring on our system. Like really, it really just tires us down. It really, really does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, can you when would you say you began to, like, kind of wake up to that and feel more like, be able to, like, tune into that voice and now that's the work you do, right? As far as, like, guiding others to hearing their own intuition.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, I started this whole intuitive journey um, in 2012, and I've always had it. Um, yeah, but how I started going to the whole Catholic thing, but so how I help people is I just try to bring awareness and what their belief systems. And so it's about removing belief systems. It's about knowing, like we talked about before, like how you call it ancestral brain, I call it family lineage. And sometimes it's from past lives, and what we bring into this world is karmic and what we're here to work on. And so we have some people have this pull to, and I don't know if I'm getting off target here, but some people have this pull into where they know they're supposed to go, but there's this wall, and that's that judgment wall that you're talking. I think it's the same thing as the judgment wall of I'm not good enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. I can't speak in front of people, because the survival brain comes in. And when you can recognize that belief system, when you bring awareness to it and you wake it up, you're able to begin to remove it. And so it's like the same thing over and over again. It's amazing the work that I do. And yeah.
Yeah. And I even have read, it's not, and I feel like now that's what it is. Like the more you do something, the easier it becomes. But like even like some of the most, distinguished speakers, they still feel that, right? Like that feeling of feeling nervous or feeling a little bit, like they feel it, but it's about taking the step forward, recognizing it. Like I hear you, I hear
Mhm.
that voice of a fear of worry or anxiety, but I'm choosing to move forward. I'm choosing love. Like I'm going to make a different choice because we do have that choice, right? I always kind of go back to that Viktor Frankl quote. He was the one who was in the concentration camp, but that there's a stimulus and response, right? So like there's always like whatever's happening, like we can choose our response. And so it's but it's about a training and the projection that we feel like. So whenever that happened when we were younger, where we began that separation from that oneness, that kind of stream of well-being that's within all of us, like that flow is there, but
Mhm.
there's times when we resist it, right? When we're not in flow with it, and we can feel it because we're closed, we're not
Right.
experiencing the good that's around us, we're not feeling that love, even when there's a lot to be really grateful for right in front of us, right? And we can kind of be in a cloud of not feeling it. Um so yeah, I think in a little bit, I can kind of get into like, because we're kind of like on the path of if that's something that comes up for you, kind of the judging. And it's not, I think there's like that point of like discernment, right? Like you need like judgment's there for a reason, it's there to, help you be safe. But I think there's a difference there where like you need to be able to discern, right from wrong. But,
well, it can be awakening too. You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like it could be really powerful. It's all
right.
of how you look at it, right? So a judgment
Mhm,
comes up and you get the opportunity to choose, right?
mhm,
It's like this power, you get to choose where you want your mind to go to. Because I know, and I know you know, that when we're in love, everything flows. Like, and what we mean by love is like when we choose to go in a direction of in a direction of not automatic, like the automatic thoughts, and you try something different. Like I've said before, my favorite show is the Seinfeld episode where it's called The Opposite George, where he does everything opposite and he gets all these things. And so it's really about doing the opposite and really feeling something different and see, because if it's something that's always brought you down, why not do the opposite? So what's on the opposite side
mhm.
is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really big. So kind of like the process that she talks about in the book that I was just going to bring up because I find it really helpful. And I think while
That's
this,
Gabriel Bernstein, right? That you're talking
yeah,
about.
the Gabriel Bernstein detox judgment,
Mhm.
um, judgment detox rather.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important, like even word, like toxic, because it can like those, if you're having like negative thoughts running, like how that's just like, it's just such a, you're closing yourself up from so much that's, could be in flow in your life, right? When like our minds will do everything to kind of make happen those thoughts in our head, right? So that's what starts showing up when we're thinking, a toxic kind of negative thought. But so the first is to kind of like not judge your judgment, right? Because how often
Yeah.
how often is it like that? Let's say like at home, maybe I was, had a rough day and I kind of like snapped at my daughter and I was like, I yelled and or, maybe she just spilled milk and I was like, oh, it was just one more thing. And it's like really just an accident. It was just milk spilled.
Mhm.
But how often is it not that thing that I'm like keep beating myself up for it over and over again for that snap, like I'll just perhaps like it's possible for us to like, I think um Kristen Neff, who writes self-compassion and is kind of like all around that. She does so much good work around practicing self-compassion, but she says like, don't beat yourself up over beating yourself up in the vein of stopping beat yourself up. Cause like we kind of can do that. We can be so hard on ourselves. I
Mhm.
think that's the big thing, like the idea that love is the antidote to judgment and it's the antidote to fear, that as we choose love and naturally within us is the ability to be compassionate, right? Like it's, you know, we can see it, when we feel like that compassion or that love for another, but we can do it for ourselves too. So you want to not judge the judgment.
Mhm.
That's kind of like the first one. And then it's so like you're witnessing it, like, and like you said, it's kind of like an awareness, a curiosity, like, okay, that's there. I don't have to be that. I don't have to, get stuck in that. But then it's, then you're, the next part is, like actually a prayer. So she's saying, like so you're saying I want this to heal. And then you can even say like a prayer in that moment, like a prayer for spirit to intervene to feel better or to I love the like in my practice it's like if I sense a fearful thought or a comparing thought, it's um like saying a prayer for that person, like I wish that person feels that love, wholeness, and harmony that I desire to feel, so it's like choosing to love them in that moment, and then seeing that love and light within them, so you're choosing to see it like that, and then you're just like another part that you could do is just like then using meditation to clear it, because I think something that's interesting, is kind of like that energy that can be there, like that cord of like if there's like a resentment or a, something that happened with somebody and you haven't been able to forgive them, like there's something still there. So maybe it's some feeling that you had and you haven't like, that there's can be like this invisible cord that's like, it's like tense, right? Like you can almost feel it.
Mhm.
So I think this process can help you like move through those types of situations of whenever there's this energy that's kind of consuming you and how you can move through it. And even like the practice of writing it out, what when you're experiencing it. And maybe, like here we're talking about judgment, but what if it's just um like a fearful thing. And now I think is a time when there's a lot of fear coming in,
Mhm.
and it's really easy to get kind of caught up in that. But I think this practice of just like bringing the awareness in, um, honoring that, and then saying a little prayer, is a nice practice to kind of tune back in
Mhm.
to that kind of flow that's within you, that natural stream of well-being that's there. And it's like our choice whether to like respond to it, to resist it, or be in flow with it.
Mhm.
Is that make sense? Like, how does that
Yeah,
feel for you?
and what I wanted to add to that, that sometimes when people are in like that fear that you're talking about, what is the best, I think the best way to work with that is also by, to be okay with whatever happens in the moment, but doing like a practice. Like what I mean by practice is like practice that fears outside of the actual fear. So it's like you're setting yourself up for it to be easier when you're going through the fear. So it's about like, okay, the other day this happened, and how do I want it to happen? Like next time, if this, because these patterns aren't just once, you know what I mean? That they would be a toxic thought. So what I think is beautiful what you said, in that also, you can practice working on something, like find something that you really would like to work on, and when you say prayer, maybe go into journaling about it. Like, what is this fear? When
Mhm.
you're in a safe place, when you're feeling safe, to really go into it. So get yourself back to safety inside your system. Maybe that's breath work, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's talking to a very trusted friend, talking to your spouse, talking to your partner, where all of your guards are down and you're feeling strong again, and you're feeling powerful into your system. And then going back and saying, well, how do I want to move past this? So
Mhm.
um
Yeah, I love that. And that's even a practice that I do. Like, so practically speaking, like what a great, just even on my phone, I keep like a little log, right? Like my husband challenged me, and, he's somewhat like you, your husband, Jackie, where you talked about kind of like that, not feeling like different voices of, like not feeling like we're good enough, or feeling like, like he doesn't really have that either. And I don't know if it's, and that's kind of nice, like to have that oneness, right? So like here we have, oneness that's within us, and we in our relationships we want to like feel that, and yet, yeah, when you're like kind of thinking of a few different things, it's really, you can't really connect with people, right? Like but being with somebody who can kind of give you that presence, and can definitely help. I think it does help to kind of move through it, and get to model, something different. But it's so good. I think even as like as a parent with children, that you kind of become more aware, because you just know how, you know you become such a, like they're such sponges, right? They're hearing what we're hearing, and helping
well,
move
one,
through.
one thing I do want to bring up, and I think this is just coming in for me, like I don't know why, but I just want to bring this up, is that also sometimes people, when they're listening to someone, when they're going through a judgment process or whatever, sometimes I think the person that's on the other side is also, I think sometimes too, if this makes sense, I'm it just coming through right now for me, so
Mhm.
I'm just processing here live, is that I think sometimes people may be overly positive. so they don't feel what's really coming up for them. So like say if you came to me about an issue or something inside of you that someone really made you upset. Like, oh my God, she didn't see me. I was doing really well and she just came along and squashed me, right? And the person that you're telling, that they turn around to you and say, well, look on the bright side, blah, 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 blah. So I
Mhm.
feel like they can do is either they don't want to feel the same thing you're feeling. So that compassion and it almost makes you feel like, you may feel like, well, I might as well brush it off, but it is important to feel our feelings. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, it's coming through right now, so it's probably needs some more
Mhm.
to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, right? Like, I mean, that's probably something where, yeah, you and like the idea of projecting something so like you're not allowing any feeling to show up that you don't feel is is legit in that moment. You may find yourself doing that. So yeah, to have someone be a mirror. I mean, I think
I
a
think
really
I think it's important. I just want to add. I think it's important if you're on the receiving end of a judgment, or not if you're in the same like car, or if you're in the same like area. It's really important, I think, to say, well, that if it bothers you about that judgment, either A, don't agree with them. That's the wrong thing for yourself. B, also don't, I don't know if I should say don't, but I would advise that um, you allow that person to have their process, like allow them to be, and say to them, like, oh wow, that stung inside of me what you just said. Like, I don't
Mhm.
feel that. And be honest with your own feelings towards that judgment that person said, because you want to help them in that process to see that they might need a new perception switch. So you, by being honest that, hey, that's that kind of hurt inside to see that you saw that person like that. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Are you sure? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it did. I mean, well, I think it's just the idea too, like just remembering, I think even in kind of our culture where like, social media where it's like, you may like go on there and be like, gosh, it seems like everything's working out for everyone else, but then it's like, that's just like the highlight, right? Like we don't know what's the whole reel of what's happening. And so it's easy to kind of sit back and like, wow, it seems like everything's working out great, but like we don't really know. And I just love to even this thought that's around, um, that everyone has their own stories of pain and sadness, and also love and kindness and compassion. Like we all are kind of feeling all these things, right? And so my path is different than everyone else's. And so we don't know why someone's processing something the way that they are.
Right.
But in any situation, all we can do is just like show up with love.
Right.
I mean, and so, yeah. So even let's say someone, you're feeling like, oh, I wish I had myself put together like that. Like she's just like, whatever a thought might be, I just think it's such a, being able to like be aware of it, but then just, like awesome, like you can like
Yeah.
be really happy about it. Like, wow, that is so great. Cause I think, as you can just like be proud and be happy for other people for what's going on, that's only going to bring more of it into your life. Cause that's a positive, right? It's a positive of like, wow, that family, look at what they're making happen. They're like travel, like whatever it is, like to be able to shift it and not like, it's not a reason to be down on yourself. It's like, wow, that's great. There's more than enough love for everyone. There's enough abundance. Like there's so much, yet um we may like just feel like, that there's not enough. Like if someone's got success, then there's not enough for me, but that's not the case, right? Like we're here with each of
Right.
our own gifts and our own experiences, our own everything. And there is a special path for each of us. And we can sometimes lose sight of it if we're on like this feeling of like, what are they doing? How is that working for them? And it doesn't mean we can't learn from people and just kind of but it's also like try to, stay in your lane, right? And know what you're good at and know what lights you
Right,
up. You can make more of it.
right. One thing I wanted to go back to, because I feel like before everyone, before the show, me and Lindsay talked briefly about the show today. And one thing there was some reason the word addiction didn't sit well with me for judgment. And I just realized as we were talking about toxic thoughts, and when she said the word toxic thought, and I was like, wow. And I started comparing it to uh, like toxic thoughts reminds me of eating like a ton of hamburgers, like just stuffing yourself down, and like how toxic it is. And I feel like I didn't realize it until this moment that it can be an addiction to just being judgmental. Just like the reason why when we drink, or if we drink too much in excess or eat too much in excess, is that we're going into this automatic pilot to put something in ourselves in order not to feel, to cover up the feeling. And so I just wanted to bring that to your awareness, that throughout this session today, or this show, I realized that yes, toxic thoughts can be addicting. It's like taking a bunch of cheeseburgers and stuffing them down, So I just wanted to make sure I brought that.
Yeah, I mean, I find that too. I mean, it's, I think it all kind of like comes down to what lies beneath it, right? And whether, we're watching, like we're just binge watching on something, like is that a numbing? Like are we doing it to numb something that we're not fully feeling or processing?
Well, I think that's interesting because yes, I think like with the cheeseburgers, if we eat a whole bunch of cheeseburgers, we're going to feel like crap. If we're going to drink a whole bunch of drinks, we're going to feel like crap. So no matter what you do, you can keep on stuffing what you're really feeling. You're going to end up feeling crap. So either you do it with it or without it. You're still going to feel like crap. So until you face the problem at hand, like what addiction it is, you're never going to feel better until you go into that other direction. Because you feel like at first you're like, oh, this hamburger is so good. Pickles, mustard, ketchup. Oh my God, eat it for me in 5 seconds. Perfect. All right. It feels really good. And then all of a sudden, building up, and then all of a sudden, like you still feel crappy. The same reason you started with, you just stuff it down, and now you got two things. So
Yeah, and I think as you bring awareness to it, the thought, right? Like so you can realize, because you can kind of like extend that process and realize, okay, that made me feel good for like a second. Like when I just put that person down or I wrote them off because I felt like I whatever it may be, like, okay, so you feel good for a moment and then you're back to, like you feel shame and judgment. And I think whether it's, overeating or over exercising or there's over drinking, and even Margaret just responded in the comments that she felt like it's true about the toxic thinking, how it can, that can, it can be addictive, right? Especially because it feels good for a moment, right? And it's kind of the reason why you want that hamburger. Like it's that there's that stimulus, like, like it's kind of the idea of like going to whatever it is, like, it's not so much like that, even that first drink of coffee that's so great. It's that feeling of like about to get the coffee. And even my husband, Dan, has talked about that because he quit smoking just like that. Like he made a choice and he quit smoking and he never went back. But it was the idea of like, it's not so much the actual act, but it was like getting through like your mind saying that you want that. And so it's, creating that space of like, okay, no, that's that thought and that doesn't serve me. I know that doesn't make me feel good. So how do I choose differently? But I think
that's a great point. I got to share this story. So I literally had like a little bit of a chocolate addiction. I have addiction. I do have addiction. So I always have to be aware. And how I always recognize it is if I start having that obsessive thought constantly in my head. And with chocolate, I'm not kidding you. At first it was like, okay, we have chocolate in the fridge. Then I started hiding it. And then all of a sudden I would obsessively think about how was I going to get my next chocolate? I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And I was like, finally, I'm like, I had to cut it out. I had to cut it out of my diet. And granted, I've introduced it, and I do this with tea and coffee. And my husband was always trying to keep me in check. Like, okay, Jackie, I know this is not like alcohol, but are you pushing the edge a little bit here? Like, he knows that there's an edge that I hit, So
Yeah.
so toxic thought is the same thing, and that's what happened to me that day. When you're off camera at this time, but it happened to me, and all of a sudden I was like, just like my brother, where he said, no, stop, no more quitting smoking. And that's the same thing that happened with me. But even with the toxic thoughts, I said, no, like this, I don't want to think like this anymore. And every time it came up again, it's quieter and quieter. And each time I do the same thing, and it's so, Lindsay, I'm not kidding you. It is so, and I'm sure you felt this, it's so powerful to turn on that power center in your body where you just like, I did it. I broke through that freaking wall. And I'm sure, like our friend Scott said last week, the friend, or Scott that was here last week, I bet you if he's hearing this right now, he's like, yes. Because he mentioned how he's a really good quitter. And it's that wall that you get past, So
Yeah, no, I think, yeah. And if he talked a little bit about, it's like you have to, like our willpower you won't be able to do it just on willpower, right? Like you need like something deeper, like that why that, lies beneath. So something deeper. And so, having like that awareness and knowing that love that is possible, that loving thinking that you can have for yourself. Like, when you are in flow and you're not thinking negatively, like it feels really great. So I think it is like, it's a retraining. And I think the steps we talk about can really help, like, journaling, like what is the thought that's coming up and just bringing awareness to it. How does it make me feel? Why am what is triggering me to think this way? So you can kind of like write this out. And as you do it, it just kind of, I think, like you said, I'm even noticing like it just brings awareness in, and then you can begin to, make a shift, and you can, because it, as one of the comments says, like you try over and over again. And then my husband will say something like, just do it. Like he makes it seem so easy, right? Like he's like, I don't have that, like I just live my life and it's easy. And sometimes it really is, but then there's other times but I do think it's something like setting yourself up too, like having the right environment, like, what you need in your home, like in your pantry, in order to make better choices, whether it's, in your fridge, having the fruit cut up, having the vegetables cut up. And, like, I know I need to have a little bit of meditation time in the morning, because the more I have brought that into my day, I'm able to be aware when I can see like these thoughts coming in that are so toxic, and I'm able to see it. Whereas I think when I was younger, like I would go a whole day thinking like this and not even know how it was hurting me and how it was like, yeah. So I think so how do you set yourself up? You have to be able to do those things that help you like stay more connected and stay more grounded.
Lindsay, I love what you just said. What's in your pantry? Like, what is in your pantry? Granted, we talk about journaling all the time, but think about it like your own little kitchen. What do you want to cook up for the day? Like, I'm not talking about food here. I'm actually talking about when something comes up for me, what am I cooking? What judgment am I cooking up here? And when that judgment comes up, I'm cooking up something, well, that doesn't taste very good. So what am I going to go in my pantry and get and make me cook up something better? Oh, I love that. I didn't know you meant that, but that's how I heard it. And
yeah.
Beautiful.
No, I think it's so true. Like I've always kind of had that idea, or like the idea of like life recipes. Like, you can follow recipes in you're cooking, and it helps make your food better. And there's a natural flow, and if you follow it and understand the science of why things cook certain way. But yeah, for whatever reason, it's not that easy, right? Like for these emotional things that come up, it just feels, but it's like, I think it is possible, right? Like what works and what doesn't work, and the more
Yeah.
you can like
Practice it or build that recipe
it.
and do
Hmm.
maybe the first time it feels kind of, it's okay.
Yeah.
Add a little bit more of this. I am beautiful and I am this. And
Hmm.
really just start owning it. Like this is a really, and after a while you're putting decorations on it after your
Hmm.
food's made and then you're about to present it and you're like, look at this. I love it. I love that
Yeah.
analogy. See, everybody
Yeah.
here on Choosing Love, we are waking you up. We're giving you recipes from your pantry of your mind and changing
Hmm.
it so you can have the best steak or the best chicken or the best life that you can possibly have. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because in the end, and oh yeah, this is another thing I wanted to bring up is, in any moment when judgment is coming in, or anything, like you can always choose, um, to see the light in another person. Like the light in me sees the light in you, and I just love that, because we have to just remember and keep like affirming that whatever, when someone is showing up in a like negative, angry, sad, and you're experiencing that, you can, in that moment, even when they're not being loving to you, you can choose to respond differently. You can choose to see the light in them even if they don't see it in themselves. So I think that that's a practice too, and that's a way to, another kind of tool in your tool belt or in your recipe book, to just to keep remembering that, as you see the light in others, you see it in yourself. Yeah, because that's what you want to be feeling, more of that.
well, I really like that you said that because I was just thinking, actually, I put on our channel I had a meditation and I had a inspiring in the moment about seeing things differently. And when
Mhm.
you started talking, I started thinking about that meditation. But then what also came up is, what if, and I this could be people's homework and just try this out for a week. But what if you pretend you're like a child seeing something for the first time, instead of seeing them with the lens that you've always had them in, maybe changing your lens a little bit and just acting like a child for the first time. Like if your child or a child that sees like someone wearing like a certain outfit, instead of going to judge him, being like, wow, how brave, or wow, how beautiful the colors are on your socks, or whatever, like really just really being in the wow moment of like seeing
Mhm.
everything with fresh eyes. Like,
Mhm.
how would that be like, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think fresh eyes, and also like the eyes of spirit, the eyes of, like the idea that, you can see that love and light in another person. I
Yeah.
see it in you, I see it in me, and just even if like, you know, even like just having that like intention and showing up with love, I think it's felt, even if that person's head is kind of, even if whomever you're talking to, if they're in a bad place, and they're even, like we talked about this with Scott last week, about someone who's going through something hard, when they're kind of in a place of, addiction, and so they're not even, but just all you can do is just like be a loving presence for them, and that's the best you can do sometimes, but that can be really powerful. So.
And one thing that, now that you're mentioning that too, like in the meditation that I had, was I said to it in the meditation something like, God, where are you? And he's like, I'm here. I've always been here. Open up
Mhm.
your eyes, look around, change how you see things.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I opened up my eyes and everything was so vibrant. The
Mhm.
trees were beautiful, like everything was so new and beautiful. And I felt like this new life. inside of me. And I was like, oh my God, I had to change the lens. I had to change my eyes. He is here. I mean, look at all the life force energy around me. The birds were chirping, like everything was so much different. It was just, I had to share. I mean, check out,
That's so great.
check out
Yeah.
the in the moment that I posted in our channel. And
Yeah.
it was just in the moment. It was my morning wake up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I get to that place all the time. I get to like that feeling of just like seeing all that beauty and light, especially like in nature, right? When we're out on a hike and I'm just like in a place I can really see it. But I've been kind of challenging to myself because I think we as humans, like we have there's so many stories and so much stuff that sometimes you can't see that same like flow and love and light. So a lot of times you can, and that is how children see. And that's why I love being around children because that's all they see. They see love in you. They see it in themselves. I mean, of course, I think around age 5 is when, you begin to like, become a little less energy and emotion, and they do get some logic. But anyway, I think even, they are so alive and curious and just can help us remember to just be that way too, because that's how we're meant to be. But it's the idea of even humans, like if we see every single person just like we can see the uniqueness and the difference in all the flowers and the trees, like it's different, and you can just embrace that beauty and that uniqueness. But to try to look at the people who are coming into your life, whoever's coming in with that same kind of openness and acceptance and understanding, I think that can be really a great way to create better connection and have more meaning, and also have better relationships, because that's what we want to do while we're here is to create meaning. And so I don't know, is there
I would love for a meditation. Do you want to do a close? I think we got to figure out. So your homework this week is to find what's in your pantry.
Yes.
And what you want to remove. Organize your pantry of yourself and remove those items, and let's start putting some good stuff in there by journaling and really identifying those belief systems that just aren't working for you anymore, and really having compassion for people around you, and also showing up. And if something's triggered inside of you, or something brings up this angst feeling inside of you, let's work with that. And come next week and bring your questions and let us answer them for you, because we can help you out. You don't need to do any of this alone. We're here to support you. So, Lindsay, are you ready to get our meditation on?
Yeah, we always like to end with a meditation. So hopefully, let you kind of like close with what you're feeling right now and just kind of get into a nice, calming, loving space. I just wanted to share this as kind of as we lead in, but I say, why doesn't everyone find a nice, comfortable position wherever you're at? Begin to just, get centered into your own body, your own space. And if it feels good to you, you can close your eyes or keep them open. Sometimes it's helpful too to just kind of focus on something, whether it's something in the room that you're in, and just kind of be present with it, and know at any time you can also use your breath to center you. And so I invite you to just kind of take a big, deep breath in and feel as your body kind of fills with air, and then release. And you may just want to focus at the area in between your eyebrows, right at the top of your head, and just kind of bring your attention there to that light as you just breathe. And of course, thoughts may come and go, and we just want to allow those to come and go without any push or pull, and just kind of keep returning to that feeling of love and lightness. Keep returning to light that's at the top of your head, and know that you can kind of even, place your hands on your stomach or even on your heart center, and just feel that love inside you. That love is a way that you can turn and choose to respond to whatever's coming up. And that in this moment, you can find that peace and centeredness. And the more time we can take tuning into that place, that's how we can feel love for ourselves. All the experiences, anything that's coming up, we can just express gratitude and extend compassion, knowing that that feeling of love and warmth is within you, and it's always there to help you move through what's coming up. You can just affirm to yourself that you are love, you are light, and you may just gonna always take that time to just breathe and be in that place of stillness. And I wanted to end with a nice little thought that's where you judge others is where you judge yourself. It's not always easy to see where others are reflecting parts of ourselves, but we can notice it, that they're reflecting back to us. And that you can always shine light into those darkness, and through your breath, you can return to that stillness and love, because that's your essence. And that you can release those feelings of fear or judgment or comparison or inadequacy, whatever it may be, and just return to that love, understanding, compassion, peace, because that's who you are. Just as it feels good to you, you can open your eyes and roll your shoulders and just get back to where it feels good to you. And we just want to thank you for tuning in today. And if you'd like, we'd be so grateful if you would share this with someone, subscribe, and do tune in again next week, every Thursday at 8 Central and 7 Mountain Time. Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Thank you for coming.